Welcome to the Florida Homesteader Podcast, where we bring the pages of the magazine to life, sharing all the stories, the skills, and the spirit of homesteading across the Sunshine State. From backyard gardens to family farms and everything in between, we are here to inspire, encourage, and celebrate the Florida homesteading way of life. I'm Jamie Bateman, your host and editor-in-chief of the Florida Homesteader magazine, and we're so glad that you joined us today. So folks, go grab you some iced tea and let's jump into today's podcast chat. Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Florida Homesteader Podcast. My name is Jamie, and I am joined today with a dear friend, David Leidel. David is with Swaine and Leidel Wealth Services, and we are going to talk all things investments, taxes. This is coming out at the end of the year, so this is a perfect opportunity for all of our farmer friends that are out there. What do I do in the upcoming year? So David, welcome to our podcast. We're so grateful to have you here today.
Hey, Jamie, I'm excited to be here. Thank you.
Yes, it'll be fun. So for those who don't know who David Leidel is, can you share just a little bit about your background and some of the things that you're passionate about when it comes to investments and taxes?
Sure. So I started back in 1998 as an investment representative with Edward Jones and opened their Lake Placid office for them. And then in 2009, Will Swaine and I came together and started Swaine and Leidel Wealth Services. About 2013, I got licensed by the U.S. Department of the Treasury to be able to prepare taxes for folks and to represent taxpayers who have tax problems, whether they're being audited, they owe the IRS money, employers who have payroll tax problems, or maybe even tax liens that are out there. So I felt like it was an important part to add into that because a lot of times the tax side gets overlooked when it comes to investments. Today, pretty much manage money for folks who are have retirement assets like 401ks or drop money, and then handle those tax issues as well.
Have you always loved the number side of life? You started with investments, and I got to say kudos to you on that, because there's a lot of those questions that overlap each other when you are working with a tax person or an accountant or an investment person. So the fact that you have both of those underneath your belt, that's a huge benefit to those who you work with.
I think so. Most investment advisors that are out there, they have some knowledge of taxes and what happens. But taxes play such an important role in what the final outcome of an investment plan is going to look like. That's why we decided to go ahead and kind of pursue it. As far as being a numbers guy, thank goodness for calculators and spreadsheets, because if it weren't for that, I would be at a real disadvantage. Math was not really my strong suit growing up, but managed to get through it all, and now look where I am. I think if you had told me when I was in high school that I would be in a career that was so number focused and driven, I would have balked at that and said there's no way, because I was the guy who said in algebra, I'm never going to use this stuff. It's not necessary, and here I am on a daily basis, and I'm amazed at what I can do in my head. I can't do it all in my head. But my younger self, rather, would be quite impressed, I think.
Well, that's me. And again, it's certainly an advantage for us that have utilized your services, and for those that can come and talk with you, knowing that you have those skill set. That's a great thing. So thank you for following that dream. All right, so we're at the end of the year. And one of the things, you get past Christmas, you get past the New Year's, and the next big thing that hits us right in the smack dab in the middle of the forehead, taxes. It's tax season. So we are at the end of the year. It's such an important season for financial planning also, because there's some things that you could potentially be doing to get yourself kind of set up in a better spot for the upcoming year. Can you talk us through a little bit, what are some of those things that you see on I don't want to say a daily occurrence, but a yearly occurrence where you see where folks are making some changes at this point to better themselves for the new year?
Sure. November and December are probably one of the busier times for us, because that's when we do like to sit down with clients, go through, review that portfolio. Even if we're managing your investments, there's a lot of times there's other stuff that people are doing outside of that, and we want to be aware of what that is and how does it play a part into that investment plan. So sitting down this time of year, it's really important because it gives you an opportunity to review what those investments look like, take a look at the tax side and do a little bit of planning, review where you're going to end up at. A lot of times for clients, we'll plug in kind of a mock return just to see, okay, if we did this, what would be the impact? Is it more beneficial to do it this year versus next year? And that December 31st deadline that you're talking about, it's kind of a drop dead date for most of the taxpayers that are out there. Once you cross into January, we've started a new year. And from an IRS point of view, we've closed that previous year off. So anything that we want to take advantage of, we need to do now. And that's why the November and December timeframe gets to be very important and gets to be pretty busy for us, right now.
Those that are listening, the average Florida family, do you have maybe the top 3 things that you would recommend to them when it comes to those things that you start looking at in that November-December timeframe?
Sure. For most people out there, if you're married filing jointly for 2025, the standard deduction is all the way up to $31,500. Most people are not going to end up itemizing. Things like charitable deductions that you might have had in the past aren't going to play as an important part as they did in previous tax seasons. But IRA contributions, health savings account contributions, those are still things that folks can take advantage of and do offer a real big benefit. So if you're a wage earner, or if you have a job where you're a W-2 type employee, we're going to look at it. We want to make sure, did you withhold enough? One of the things that's changed over the last couple of years is we've seen withholding amounts come down, and that can cause a surprise when it comes to tax time. Those other deductions that I mentioned, like your HSAs and IRAs, those can help to either minimize, tax debt or maybe even help you get over the hump to where you get more of a refund. If you have a business, then you want to take a look at what kind of business expenses do you have. If it was a good year in the business, you may want to buy some equipment that you've been putting off or that you had even planned to purchase in the first quarter of next year. Do it now. You'll get some added benefits. You might want to look at some accelerated depreciation. A lot of guys, especially in the farming industry, they go and they buy a new truck this time of year. It's a company purchase, and then they will accelerate that depreciation to help reduce some of that income. The HSA and IRA, you can kind of put off until the new year. That's not a December 31st deadline, but it's something to start looking at and considering when you're wrapping up this tax year.
I was talking to another farmer friend who deals with the sales of tractors in their business. Yep. And that was one of the things that they had mentioned was how busy they had gotten. And the end of the year typically is that reason. I can see now based on what you were saying, it kind of clicks. That makes sense. You've got farmers that are out there, they use tractors for their businesses, their farming, whatever it is, and utilizing that purchase to help on the back end.
So yeah, so you get the benefit of the expense, but then it's a piece of equipment that you're going to depreciate. Depending upon the depreciation schedule of what you're buying, you can accelerate that. And if you accelerate it to where you took it all this year, well, that's where you're going to get all of that tax benefit from.
So what are some of the mistakes that people make with that when not buying the tractor, I guess?
Sometimes we get busy. We're all human beings, and, we all have families and commitments and things that are going on. And so I mentioned that, we look at kind of that November, December timeframe. We actually get most of everything done in November because people get distracted by December. But those purchases, it's easy to forget or be like, I just can't get around to it. I don't have time. I'm going to do it in January. Well, that's going to become next tax season's, benefit, not this tax season. In farming, particularly, some years are good and some years are not good. This may have been a good year, and next year may not be as good of a year. So there may not be as much of a benefit if we put it off until January. So yeah, that's one of the things that happens. I think another mistake that typically happens is people get kind of confused on what is going to actually be a tax benefit. When we talk about homesteading, the IRS has very specific rules. There's 3 big industries they look at when it comes to hobby loss, which is farming, horses, and race car teams. If you have any of those 3 things that you are filing a tax return for, and it looks like it's more of a hobby and not a legitimate business that you're intending to make a profit from, then the IRS will disallow the losses. So when you're doing your tax planning, particularly if you're a homesteader, you got to look at and balance out what expenses do I have, because I can't create a loss most of the time, but I can get it to where I'm either a break even or a very small profit. If you have some folks out there who are making money as homesteaders, there's ways to reduce that income and take advantage of things like, and I'll go back to your IRAs and your HSA accounts. Those are legitimate deductions that you can take advantage of. And if it'll bring that income down to where it's closer to a break even, then you're going to be fine. But really understanding the tax code, which is a nightmare, but it's one of those things that plays an important part about, what can I do and how can I use it to my advantage? We had an IRS commissioner a few years ago that said that, people are not required to pay more than what their legitimate tax really is. So, using the tax code to your advantage, that's all on the up and up. I mean, you can use it for those things. You just got to understand it and make sure that you do it the right way.
It's almost a glimmer of hope, if you will, for those that are like me, small homestead concept. We do a little bit on the sides, as far, not necessarily for money making, or it's not going to pay the mortgage, but it does help offset some of our expenses that we have on raising those animals, or per se, or some of the actual farming costs that we might have. And I know you helped us with that personally this past year, and understanding what that looked like. I didn't know that there would be an advantage for what we were doing. But knowing that and understanding that, it does give that little bit of a glimmer of hope, if you will, for those that are out there that are either currently doing it or are looking into doing it. What can I do, especially if you're getting ready to start off in a homesteading business, or you want to do something from your home, understanding what those rules are and what you permitted to do, not permitted to do, having that. And of course, there's a lot more deeper conversations. We're just literally touching the icing on the cake right now. Maybe the sprinkles, actually.
Exactly. One of the things that it just made me think of it from what you were talking about, how you're organized as a homesteader also can have an impact, because if you're one of these folks who, let's just say, break even is $5,000 of profit. Well, if you put that on a Schedule C or a Schedule F, that extra income can also be subjected to unemployment taxes, which is kind of another surprise that you can get on your tax return. So using some of these steps to try to reduce the income, that's going to help to avoid it. Or look at how you're structured, and maybe you should look at some sort of corporate entity to run this through, because that'll help to reduce, if not eliminate, that extra tax liability.
With you sharing all this, I feel like I need to have David in my back pocket at all times. But these are services that you provide to folks, so that if folks do have questions, they can call you up, obtain your services. You can walk them through this and everything. And I will speak from personal experience. There's never a stupid question. I have sent David plenty of questions. And I think I've even sent repeat questions before. and he's always so gracious. So folks, if you're listening and you're looking for somebody who understands the tax laws, the investment sides, understands homesteading, understands ag, David's going to be the one that you're going to want to talk to, because he has certainly been that for us. So let's switch gears over to investment side. Now, we talked a little bit about taxes, what we should do on our farms and that types of things. What should people look at when it comes to investments, kind of preparing for the end of the year or coming into the first of the year?
It's that's a very interesting question when you start looking at the investment side of the world. We run into many, many different personalities when it comes to our clients. And I've always found it ironic, maybe, that farmers in general are very conservative people. And I say it's ironic because the risk, especially when you look at some of these bigger operations that are out there, whether it be citrus, watermelons, blueberries, that kind of stuff that are out there, that's a huge risk. I mean, it either makes it or it doesn't. So I think a lot of times when we look at investments with folks who tend to want to be more conservative, we got to keep that in mind, that their risk is really out there in the field someplace. But when it comes to investments, the reason that what we do is important is because, as we all know, we've seen this over the last at least 5 years at a pretty high rate. Inflation will eat up your money. A dozen eggs is not what it was 7 years ago. Orange juice is not what it was 7 years ago. You go to the grocery store and you can spend $100 and walk out with it in two hands. It used to fill a cart. I'd tell the story that when I was a kid, I'd go to the grocery store with my mom and we would do 2 weeks of shopping and we would fill a grocery cart and it would be right around $100. It wasn't too long ago where I was at the grocery store and I spent $100 and I walked out with it in my hands. So we all kind of understand that inflation is there. And when we look at investments are just tools for us. Whether it's a stock, an exchange traded fund, a mutual fund, whatever it might be, those are just tools. Those tools are meant to solve some sort of financial problem that we're trying to conquer. A lot of times when I sit down with somebody and I ask them, what is your goal? A great goal to communicate to your investment advisor is going to be something along the lines of, I want to beat inflation by X percent. Whether it's 4 or 5 or 6, something like that. That way your money is growing, it's keeping pace with inflation, and it's going to be worth more down the road. Because when you go to access that money for whatever that future plan is, it's got to be worth more tomorrow than what it is today. If you put all your money in a CD, I had a guy one time tell me that CD stood for cash depreciation, but they basically are not going to keep up with the rate of inflation out there. That's why we tend to look at, okay, if it's a long-term horizon, let's talk about those stocks. Let's talk about what investments we can make that are going to outpace inflation and grow that money. So kind of a long way around the barn to get to the point of, what we do on that side is really to build your financial future.
I like the idea, the concept of building at a higher percentage or at a higher pace than what inflation is doing. I like that because you're right, that helps prepare for the future in a way that you can look at your numbers right now and investments and think, how in the world is this going to work? And when I retire in 20 years or however long it is, or you're getting ready to retire, what does that look like? There's this benefit of contributing to your IRAs and other retirement accounts. And I mentioned, if you're on the onset of getting ready to, or you're building up for your retirement. But what about those that are getting ready to retire? We've got those farmers that are out there and they've been doing this, or they're wanting to change some things. Is there still hope for that opportunity to grow those investments in a way to help defeat the rising cost of those eggs and everything when you go to the grocery store?
Absolutely. If you came into my office today and said, we plan to retire in... Sometimes they come in and I'm retiring tomorrow, and sometimes I'm retiring in 6 months. The planning cycle can be, any number of different things. But one of the things you have to look at is, okay, well, how old are you? Even if you're 65 years old and you're retiring, your life expectancy is probably up into the upper 80s. So we've still got another 20 years that we've got to plan for. And the difficult spot is a lot of times we get to that retirement date and we think, okay, I've made it. Well, not really. Because what are the things that have had the most inflation here over the last recent years? It's been food. You still got to eat in retirement. It's been healthcare costs. You're going to use a lot more healthcare costs when you're in retirement than you probably did in your 30s and 40s. The expenses you actually have in retirement are the ones who are affected the most by inflation. When we sit down and take a look at it, we have to do kind of a split plan where we're planning for income. And we're also planning for growth as you move through that cycle. You mentioned IRAs, and that's a big source of your income in retirement. But the HSA, that health savings account, this is one I wanted to kind of hit on a little bit because it's overlooked so much. The health savings account is a place where you can put money into. It grows tax-free for healthcare expenses. So one of the things that we've tried to teach our clients to understand is when you have a job and your employer offers you an HSA option, we typically look at that as, okay, I'm going to go there first. I'm going to take that money to, pay for doctor visits, pay for prescriptions, pay for the things that are allowed under those rules. But the one thing that gets missed is, well, what if I put that into a investment account? And we don't do that here. Mine is actually at Fidelity. And I fund it on an annual basis. And I just simply put it in the S&P 500. And let it grow. It's almost another savings account for when I get to retirement, because I know that I'm going to use more healthcare costs when I'm in retirement. It'll grow tax-free. So it's another source of almost, pseudo income that I'll be able to access to offset some of those costs when I get to retirement. As long as you're still earning money, you can make those contributions. Once you will get to a point, especially if you're somebody who's living solely off of things like Social Security or something like that, where you won't be allowed to do it. So if you can do it in your younger years and almost have the mindset that this is an additional savings account for retirement, you're going to have more tax-free money that you can utilize when you get to that point.
Is that somebody you mentioned, if you have your employer who has that set up, if you are at your own business type, is that something that you can still do? You don't have to be employed, in other words, by another entity. If you have your own business and you're doing it, you can still apply that HSA.
Correct. That's exactly right. So while you're working or doing whatever it is, even if you're a self-employed individual, you can still make those contributions while you're working.
That's something that y'all can help get that set up, how you do that, what that looks like, type of a thing.
We can guide you in that. Our primary custodian is Charles Schwab, and they do not. Now it changes all the time, and they may get to where they'll finally, offer it. But when I started funding mine, Schwab did not offer it. And I was looking for a place, like you can go to a bank and put money in there, but like I mentioned, if you're not going to use it in the here and now, and you want to use it 10, 20 years from now, or even 10 years from now, having that option to put it into some sort of growth vehicle, that's what I was looking for. So I ended up turning to Fidelity, but I can walk anybody through how to set it up. If I did it myself, I don't usually do that kind of thing around here. I have a great staff who opens those accounts and deals with that, but even I was able to figure it out. So I can walk you through it pretty easily.
We'd like to take a quick break to thank our advertiser for today's show. For generations, families in our community have trusted Long's Air Conditioning of Avon Park, proudly keeping homes comfortable since 1947. From reliable air conditioning systems to dependable whole home generators, Long's does it all with service that you can count on. As a trusted Carrier dealer and a member of Carrier's Hall of Fame, Long's Air Conditioning has earned a reputation built on integrity, expertise, and hometown care. When comfort matters most, trust the company that Florida families have depended on for decades. Long's Air Conditioning, keeping your family comfortable season after season. To connect with them, visit their website at longsair.com. That's longsair.com, or by calling 1-800-725-7571. Now back to our show. All right, so we talked a little bit about those that are kind of midstream, those that are getting ready to retire, but we've got some that are just getting ready to start off. And you know what, and I want to say, not even getting ready to start off as far as their age. I'm not talking necessarily those that are out of high school or anything along those lines. I'm talking, what if there was somebody who is in their mid-30s, maybe even mid-40s, that has never done this before for one reason or another? They weren't guided correctly. They didn't think about it. They didn't think they could, and everybody can. So what steps would you give to somebody? Again, not talking age. I'm just talking where you were at in your own, I guess, life investment side. How would you instruct or encourage somebody to get started?
The time frame for everybody is different, kind of like what you mentioned. Most of the time, if you're anything like me, when I was in my 20s, you didn't have two nickels to rub together. Saving for retirement was not a top priority. But at some point, folks get started and you start to have a little bit of that extra income that's rolling around. Time is the most important ingredient when it comes to planning for your time down the road, whether it's retirement, buying a house, purchasing a car, whatever it might be. So taking advantage of the time and just understanding that, don't want to get your information from TikTok and, social media and all that kind of stuff. You can go find sound investments. I mentioned the S&P 500 for my HSA account. It's an easy thing to do. The S&P 500 is the 500 largest companies in America. Most of the names that are in there, people are going to recognize, whether it's Home Depot, Coca-Cola, Disney. Those are the companies that you're going to be investing in that index. You can find a fund. Vanguard makes them. You can find an exchange-traded fund, which is going to track that index, and the symbol on that is SPY. You can buy it, and you don't have to worry about it. You put your money into it, and you let it do its thing. It's one of those ideas that you put the money in there and you can forget about it. You don't have to actively manage it. You don't have to worry about it. If you turn on the news and it says the market went up today, then your account went up today. There's going to be ups and downs all the time, but over a longer period of time, that's going to continue to go up. A vote of confidence in capitalism here in America, which I'm a big believer in. you'll be able to do just fine. When you get a little bit more sophisticated, we start talking to people about adding in specific companies. Right now, your technology, your AI type stuff has been very successful, but there's other things that have been very successful too. I've got several accounts that we bought NVIDIA, which is an AI company, and we bought Caterpillar at the same time. Believe it or not, we bought them on a dip when we were having the whole tariff thing. Both of those two companies have performed almost identically. So it's really a matter of just finding good, solid companies that are going to do well in the long term and going ahead and being willing to buy those and hang on to them. Usually you don't have to do a lot of trading. I mean, we're not day traders here, so you can buy stuff and you can hang on to it and it'll do just fine.
It's like watching the weather. It's always going to change.
There's an old joke in this business. Why did God create the weatherman? And it was to make the economists look good.
I told a farmer friend it was just yesterday. I told him we were talking about the weather and how, it was supposedly in our area, it was supposed to rain. And I said, being a meteorologist, there's the joke out there that that's the one job that you can be 80% wrong in and you're still going to have a job.
Exactly.
If you're a meteorologist listening, we do love you because we do want to hear what the weather is going to be. I knew somebody who I used to work with who had invested in the market, and he would drive himself crazy watching the market every day. I remember one time I was in his office and the market dropped, and he's like, "Oh my gosh, I got to call, blah, blah." And he starts freaking out. And I knew enough to know, just dude, write it out 24 hours. I bet you anything it's going to change, but it does fluctuate quite often in things. So
in this day and age, we've done some wonderful things for our clients to create, to add to that frustration, like with apps and, daily access to see what your account is doing.
Yeah.
And, I always ask people, I'm like, if you had an appraiser come by and appraise your house every day, would you do that? I mean,
right.
Otherwise, what is this money for? If it's for 5, 10, 15 years down the road, well, then today's prices don't really matter. Mm-hmm. And again, are we buying good companies? Are we looking in and making solid investments? And if that's the case, I don't think that no matter how much Caterpillar drops, that Caterpillar is going to go out of business. So it'll work in the long run.
Yeah, it will. I like that idea, that an analogy. You don't have somebody come out and appraise your house every day, so don't worry about your investments. We have families that are out there that are even trying to plan, even if it's not necessarily investment, it could be your child's education and what that looks like. Do you have any insight or any wisdom that you can share with those that have little ones that they want to plan for their kids' future also? Because that's an investment as well.
Absolutely. And it's an expense that hits you kind of right about the time you start to get your feet underneath you in life. The big thing that we tell people is in Florida, the Florida prepaid college system is by far the best. Mm-hmm. You need to kind of sit down and have an idea of what is college going to look like for your kids. Are they going to go to a state college first and then transfer to a university? Are they going to go off and go right into a university? But take a look at the prepaid college fund first. That's the starting point. A lot of folks will ask about 529 plans, which are investment accounts. And what I tell people is those are great for grandparents. Grandma and grandpa want to give some money at Christmas time. Have them put it into the 529 account, or at least some of it, so that when they get to college, there's some other money there that they can access and that they can use. Okay. The 529 plans are not a great first step, I would say. You've got a little bit more uncertainty with it. Over time, yes, they can do great, but the flip side is when does that market correction sort of show up? If I'm using just a 529 plan and it grows, and I've got a value of like say $10,000 in it today, and we have something like 2008 roll around again, well, that could get cut in half, and is that going to impact your child's educational plans? So that's why we go with that prepaid approach, because that's solid. We know what that's going to be. We know what it's going to pay. And they give you a great discount to go ahead and fund it early. And that's the starting point.
You might have a kindergartner. You have no idea what that little one's getting ready to do. You don't know what God's plan is for that child. And it may not be an actual traditional college in the sense of a 2 or 4 year degree. It may be a certification. It may be a license in some type of trade that helps them to get a great job. But that can still pay for those expenses.
That's exactly right.
Yes.
And that's why taking that kind of an approach is so important, because the earlier you do it, the more bang for your buck you're going to get, number one. And then number two, like you mentioned, who knows what they're going to grow up and want to be. And we've seen the world change dramatically on the technology side. There's a lot of folks who are very interested in the technology sector, but they don't want to go to college, because why go spend 4 years getting a degree in a technology field when it's going to all be different in 4 years? There's other certification programs that might be more applicable to helping them get out there and get started and do things. And then we've also got a lot of real need in this world for those trade occupations that are out there, whether it's electrical, HVAC, auto repair, welding, lineman programs. I mean, there's a whole host of things and jobs that are out there. And once they start to realize what those opportunities look like, it may shift from wanting to go through a traditional 4-year education program.
I will say, as a testimonial to our kids, I have one that started off in college and tracking down. He wanted to follow in his dad's footsteps of criminal justice side of life. He got maybe a year into it, and he came to us one day and just very humbly said, "Books are not for me. This is not what I want to do. I think I want to go into the lineman area and get that certification." And he did. He is grown substantially in that career. And it's just amazing to see. And then we have our other child that did the 4-year course, and she's doing excellent as well. So each kid's different, and just being flexible with them, but being prepared to help them when they do make that change, because they're going to make that change. You think if they get into college, nope, they're set. No, they're going to change in college too.
That's exactly right.
So but having that reassurance and that safety net, if you will, to help them maneuver through that, it makes it a lot easier for sure. So
it does. I mean, if you look back, if you don't do the prepaid plan and your child does end up going to college and you're having to pay today's tuition prices, I mean, it can be a little disgruntling to look at and say, wow, I could have done this for half price, type idea.
Yeah. If you start now, if you've got those littles, when they get to be 18, 20 years old and they're going through college, you can then look back to now and say, ha.
That's right. That's exactly right.
It's going to be cheaper now than it is in 20 years, just like it was cheaper 20 years ago than it is now. So it's crazy how that changes. So we're talking all things investments and opportunities for people to save. If you had to give some direction, and of course everybody's different and we understand that, but kind of in order of prioritizing, you have investments or investing, you have saving, and then you have paying down debt. Mm-hmm. How would you rate those out?
So we get that one quite a bit. I will tell you, I hate debt. Debt is something that I am it's a drain. It has a huge impact on what you're able to do with your life and the financial freedom that you have, no matter what age you're at. When we sit down and we take those three kind of pillars into consideration, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to look at how much debt do you have and what debt do we need to get rid of. If you've got a mortgage, I would not make paying off my mortgage my first priority. That's kind of going to get lumped into the category of the good debt. But if you're dragging around some credit card bills, and even a car payment. I mean, now some people, it depends on the individual, because some folks are going to trade cars frequently. Others are going to buy a car and they want to pay it off and drive it for 10 years. If you're at that point in life where you're like, I just want to pay off my car and not have a car payment, then that's something that we want to prioritize. But we look at how much income that is coming in, how much money is going towards debt, and that's going to make the determination on how aggressive we need to be with paying down some of those debts. Once you get the debt portion under control, and it's kind of pretty close to being, you almost want to make it number one, because it really should be number one, but it depends on just the amount of debt we're dealing with, is that savings component you mentioned. The book's going to tell you 6 months worth of income set aside. I don't disagree with that. That's money that needs to just go into like a CD. We don't worry about the cash depreciation component of it. It's got to be accessible, because, cars and washing machines do not break down when you want them to. And things in life that happen, you got to be prepared for. You can't use that savings account for a vacation and stuff like that. It's money that's got to be really protected and there for when whatever in life is going to throw your way, because if you live long enough, you're going to get a curveball. The investment side is really the third part. And I mentioned that time is the most important ingredient in the investment component. But those other two can be such a drain that we have to kind of set that one aside, tackle the other two, and then come up with a plan for how much can we start to put away. A lot of times it starts with just $50 a month, trying to develop that habit of putting money aside that we don't plan to use. It's going to be used down the road. But those other two are they're more important, I would say. Once you get to where you can start to set money aside for a longer period of time, that's when you're really going to start to grow and be able to see that, yeah, there's some financial, stability and freedom coming your way.
Let's say you've got somebody who is out there and they are putting $50 a month into an account. Can they at any point redirect that money to utilize to get those investments growing even more?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Money comes down to developing habits. We all have habits with our money. It doesn't matter who you are. We have people who will spend every dime they make. There's people out there who will spend more than they make. And there's going to be folks that are on the other side that are saving money and stuff like that. But these are all just habits. One of the things that I talk to folks about, and I think the car industry probably started this for us, but have you ever gone to a car dealership and they wanted you to negotiate based on monthly payment? Well, we kind of know that's a horrible way to negotiate.
Yeah.
Because we don't know really what we're paying for. We're signing up for a monthly payment. And these days, between, streaming services, cell phones, car washes, you name it, everybody wants to give you a monthly payment. And $20 sounds like you can afford it, but you start adding them all up. Okay, well, this is a habit that we've gotten into that we're just going to live like that. And we got to break that cycle and say, instead of paying other people 30, 40, $50 a month, I want to pay myself that $50 a month and start directing it into that investment account, set it up to where it just automatically invests into whether it's a mutual fund or an exchange traded fund, something like that on a regular basis so that you have some money that's growing for the long term, out there.
I have a friend who took that philosophy, and we were talking about those that do house cleaning. And she actually looked into getting a house cleaner one time. And if you're listening and you're a house cleaner, I keep going, you got this. But what she did is, instead of hiring somebody to clean her house, she decided she was going to pay herself to clean her house. She took that money and she put it in an envelope, and every month or so, maybe it was every quarter, I can't remember when, she would take it and she would go and invest it. She started watching it grow and grow. I thought, what a cool idea. Now I had my kids to clean my house, so I know. but kind of go along with what you were just saying, when you redirect your thoughts and your thinking, and you start looking at, okay, where's my money going? You start really looking at where you're putting your money at. Then you start thinking, okay, do I have to put my money there, or can I do something different? The idea of paying yourself, it helps. It helps grow.
That's a big thing. And I love that story. That's an awesome way to kind of look at what could have been an expense that's turned into more of something that's going to help you save for the future. When we have somebody who comes in and they're getting ready to retire, typically, we've done this for a multitude of different people. We'll ask them to go back home, pull the bank statements, pull the credit cards, and look at where you're spending your money. I mean, if you go to Starbucks every day, you're not shocked that you spend a lot of money at Starbucks, but you might be shocked at just what that number actually comes out to be. Eating out, Starbucks, things like that. There's a lot of expenses that we have that we just do, and we don't really notice how much it is. And when you actually see the number and you start to see where your money is going, it can be an eye-opening experience. And it's one of the first steps in really trying to get a handle on, what am I doing with my money? A lot of times you'll see that Starbucks bill and you'll be like, yep, I'm going to cut that back a little bit because I could use that money to fund a vacation once a year, as opposed to drinking a cup of coffee that I could just make at the house for significantly less.
And it's crazy when you start looking at those things that start adding up. It will blow your mind. We did that with just eating out. Now, I would say maybe once every month or 2 months we might eat out or something like that, but we just got ourselves trained. We're not eating out. We would rather put that money someplace else, and we're just going to cook at home, which we love doing.
I mean, there's a trade-off with the convenience. If you're the type of person who gets up every morning, leaves the house, and runs through McDonald's, well, it doesn't seem like much when you get that $5 bill. But if you do it 5 days a week, 4 weeks a month, 12 months a year, you might be happier just, making your own Egg McMuffin.
And something that, and I kind of fallen back on some Dave Ramsey principles. When you use your phone app to pay for something, or if you are using your debit card, you don't really feel that transaction until you look at those statements. But if you have cash and you're having to physically hand over that $5 and you start seeing that cash dwindle in your wallet, that's when you start having those gut feelings like, it's more of you're putting it to your senses type of a thing. And for us, cash is king. We will use cash. If we don't have the cash in our wallet, we don't buy it. We just don't do it. We don't look at the debit card and say, oh, well, I could borrow from this one to pay for that. Or no, if we don't have the cash, which is our allowance, sits on the shelf until we can.
That's a very good way to do it. And I think one of the biggest downfalls we've had when it comes to personal finance has been the fact that we've gone so much to an electronic system. I mean, your paycheck comes into your bank account. You don't get a check anymore. You don't see it. It's deposited. It goes in. You've got bill pay already set up for most of your bills and stuff. So the money just kind of goes out. So there's no real tangible money experience anymore. And like for younger folks who never dealt with cash, there's kids today who've never even written a check out of a checkbook. So it's changed so dramatically that we lose sight of what I would say is really the value of that money. We did exactly that probably about 10 years ago when we were working on, getting finances kind of under control. We gave out allowance type money and this is what you had, and we weren't using debit cards and we got away from it. If you spend it all by Tuesday, well, you had to wait till next week to get more money. It helps a lot when you can actually feel and see that money going out. But the world has changed very dramatically, and that's why going back in and looking at those statements and adding up, okay, well, where did I really spend the money? Holy cow, I didn't realize I knew I was eating out at least 17 times a week, but I didn't realize how much it was costing me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it adds up. It's crazy. I like that. So you kind of mentioned the youngers, and I mentioned them also, the younger generation. You've got one in high school, or is he getting ready to graduate high school?
Nope, he's in college. He started up at South Florida State College. He's finishing his first semester, and then I've got one that's going to graduate from UF this Saturday.
You know what? I remember that now. I remember seeing the senior pictures, thinking, "Oh my gosh, how is he already there?" That's just, she's graduating this Saturday.
Yep.
Wow. Wow. Which, of course, at the time that this comes out, she's already going to be graduated. But hey, here we go. We hope so. All right. So money tips that you wish every 18-year-old would know. What would that be?
So this is my favorite question because this is the starting point for setting the foundation for what life is going to look like as you go through life. We've had this conversation with our kids. Both of my kids, they were lucky that they had jobs before they were 18. So we kind of conquered the whole bank account and stuff like that. But when you hit 18, there were two things that we did with ours that I think that is very important to do. The first one is to have a conversation about credit with your kids. Talk to them about it, because when they're 18, they're going to find out about credit cards and stuff. A lot of parents out there will sit there and tell them, don't get a credit card. Well, the only credit card they're going to give them is a $500 credit card, so they can't get in a whole lot of trouble. But I wanted mine to have a credit card. I wanted them to start building that credit and create their own credit history, because when they turn 25 years old and they want to go buy a house, there needs to be some credit, out there so the lenders can see that. So that was a big one. That was one that I sat down and tried to really, hone in with them. And then the other was that time value of money. Start now. Start developing that habit of saving. I mean, when you're 18, you're usually not in financial debt. You might have a job, hopefully, and you might be used to going out and spending money and stuff like that. But again, let's rein that back in. Let's not even get into the habit of, I got to go to Starbucks every day or some of the other places that might be taking my money. And set something aside for yourself. You can open up that investment account. You can do the $50 a month and start working on that. Those are two of the big things that we drilled into our kids' heads. And it's kind of what I do for a living. So I was able to make them pretty financially astute. I think that it's now is when you got to start learning this stuff at that younger age, because if you wait until you're married and have a couple of kids and stuff like that, it gets a lot harder. The habits are already developed. And anybody who's been young and had children and been starting out, it's hard. There really doesn't feel like there's any way to set aside money and save for something down the road. But when you're 18 and you don't have those responsibilities, you can start to lay the groundwork to when you get to that point, it's a lot easier to maintain and manage. As you go through life, you can up that amount, you can save more money, and it'll pay off.
Your savings account or your investment account that you establish actually becomes your bill. And you start
Yeah,
factoring that into your income or into your debt to income rate, not necessarily debt, but you start factoring that into your income ratio. Okay, I'm making this amount. So when you go looking at that car payment or you go looking at that house, well, these are what the things that I already have coming out of my account. And if you've got savings and or investments already in there, it's in there.
exactly.
It's factored in. So
And once you get used to it, it's a lot easier to maintain that and keep doing it versus, okay, I'm married, we have 2 jobs, we have a house payment, we've got all of this, and now we're supposed to start factoring something like that in. I mean, that's a hard time to do it. To your point, you're exactly right. If I'm already planning to make that contribution on a monthly basis, then that's going to affect what kind of mortgage I'm going to get, what kind of rent payment I might have, what kind of car I'm going to drive. And you'll start to prioritize that over some of the other things that the marketing world is going to try to persuade you against.
Yeah, absolutely. David, this has been so interesting for me. And I hope, and I know, I don't want to say I hope, I know that this is going to be a benefit for a lot of our listeners also, and especially whoever is getting ready to be established, whatever that looks like, and those that are already established and what this looks like going into the new year. So I appreciate your time. I appreciate your knowledge and your wisdom that you have just poured into this. So thank you for that. How can folks connect with you? How do our listeners find you?
I mean, the easiest way is to give me a call. Our Swaine Leidel's phone number is 863-385-1101. You can reach out to me there, and I'm happy to answer questions for folks, give them some advice or whatever they might need and help them in whatever way we can.
All right. And you have a website?
We have a website. It's swaineleidel.com. It's probably not been updated in a very long time. I think the last update we did was we decided we needed to take the pictures of our kids off because they're no longer 4 and 5.
Okay. So stick to the phone number, folks.
If you want to get a hold of me, give me a call.
Okay. 863-385-101. Correct?
That's it.
All right. Great. David, any last minute pointers, homesteading tips, anything like that you want to share with our listeners?
I think it's a great thing to be able to get involved with, and when it comes to the homesteading, and to be able to really take care of yourself and be self-sufficient in that regard. Love working with your fans and friends that are out there. If they've got questions on some of the topics that we covered, especially in the earlier part when it comes to how to get set up and some of the things to sidestep, give me a call. I'll be happy to share that with you.
Well, we appreciate you, and y'all are a partner of ours. If you picked up that November, December issue or any of our issues throughout 2026, you're going to see Swaine and Leidel Wealth Services in there. So we appreciate your support as well. All right, my friend, that does it for this edition. I'm sure we can have you back again. This was fun. And if you have any questions, also, you can just shoot us an email, and we will be happy to pass those along to David. And maybe that's something that with your questions, we can bring them back on, and we can even have a Q&A with David. I think that would be kind of a fun thing to do. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you, David. And we will chat with you soon.
Thanks, Jamie. I appreciate it.
That's what homesteading in Florida means, and that's the story that we're proud to share in the Florida Homesteader. Thank you so much for joining us today. Be sure to subscribe to our channel, share this episode with a friend, leave us a rating, and check out our magazine, the blog, and our YouTube channel for even more Florida homestead inspiration. Until next time, keep growing, keep preserving, and keep the homesteading spirit alive. Y'all come back now.